At a deserted bus station, he saw 3 children with the exact same eyes as his, and the woman standing next to them was the ex who vanished without a single goodbye. But what took his breath away wasn't the past. It was the truth that was about to tear apart a system of power that had erased him from the very lives of his own biological children. Do you think fatherhood can be stolen? With money and the law? Watch how one man, armed with intellect, persistence, and a strand of hair, exposes an entire system built on deception. This isn't just a story about DNA. It's a journey to reclaim the truth and redefine what it means to be a father. Are you ready? Lucas Tan had no intention of stopping. He only pulled into the rest stop in Colorado for a quick espresso, then planned to head straight to the tech conference in Aspen, where he was slated to be the keynote speaker. But in that moment, everything stopped. In the corner of the snow-covered lot, a black woman sat curled up on a chipped stone bench. Next to her were 3 small children, playing in the snow, wearing mismatched shoes and wrapped in a frayed wool scarf that smelled faintly of damp mildew. All 3 had hazel green eyes, rare, deep, haunting, exactly like Lucas's. He froze. His heartbeat faltered. The woman was Zariah Wells, the woman who had disappeared from his life without a single goodbye. And those 3 kids, if his eyes weren't deceiving him, looked like miniature versions of himself. Lucas gripped his car keys tighter, the blood draining from his face. One question shot through his mind, sharp, cold, desperate. Are those my children? 5 years ago, on the very day Lucas Tan received his 12th rejection letter for his unfinished genetics app, Zariah disappeared. No message, no goodbye. Their once warm apartment was left with nothing but a cracked ceramic mug in the sink and a few half-read novels on the shelf. Back then, Lucas had nothing, just a glitchy line of code, an old laptop, and 2 calloused hands from typing 18 hours a day. He told himself, maybe she was tired of the no home, no future, nothing certain kind of life. He couldn't blame her. He didn't. Still, on some nights, in the silence between keystrokes, he would open his inbox, just in case, hoping to find a lost message buried in spam. Lucas, I need time. But there was nothing. Zariah vanished like she'd never existed. And now, 5 years later, in this frozen, forgotten town, she reappeared. No explanation. Only 3 children, with his eyes. Lucas Tan is now the CEO of Genovax, the largest genetics platform in America, having just signed a $300 million contract with the Department of Health. He owns a penthouse in San Francisco, flies by private jet, and every morning his assistant sends over a list of international investors eager to partner. But right now, in the biting white snow, 3 children, who might carry his blood, are wearing frayed sweaters with patched elbows, carefully counting rusted coins in their tiny hands. Mom, is it enough? I think we're just 25 cents short. The words hit Lucas like a punch to the chest. He, who once tweaked gene sequences to predict early-stage cancer, had no idea that the children carrying his very DNA were surviving like shadows at the margins of society. Next to one of them sat a faded backpack with the slogan, "Artifacts of the future start today." Lucas used to believe he was a man ahead of his time, but now the past is a blur, the present is cracking beneath him, and the future may have already been stolen. Lucas stepped forward, almost in a trance. The snow crunched beneath his leather shoes, but his heartbeat was so loud it drowned out the wind. He didn't know what to say. He just knew he had to get closer, see more clearly, understand. Zariah looked up. In that instant, their eyes locked, and 5 years of silence exploded in a single heartbeat. She flinched, Her arm instinctively pulled the three children behind her, like a lioness guarding her cubs, and Lucas stood frozen. One of the kids, the youngest, blinked up at him, then pointed with a small finger. "Mom, why does that man look exactly like the guy I drew yesterday?" Zariah went pale. Lucas stood in stunned silence. He wasn't sure what hurt more, the fact that she looked at him like a threat, or that his own child had once drawn his face out of pure imagination. "Zariah." His voice cracked like rotting wood in the dead of winter. "Are you really planning to let them grow up, not knowing who their father is?" Zariah stepped back, her eyes locked on Lucas, but her arms still wrapped tightly around the children, as if one more step from him, and she would bolt. "Lucas," she whispered, her voice trembling like paper in the wind. "You shouldn't come any closer to the kids." The words cut like a blade, not because they were cold, but because they came from the one person who had once been his safest place. "What did you say?" Her gaze, unable to meet his eyes. "Someone won't let me tell you. I'm being watched. I have been for a long time." Every move, she gripped the strap of her bag, like she was holding back a truth too heavy to speak. "So you hid them from me? Because you were afraid? Of who? Of what?" He snapped, trying to keep his voice steady as emotion surged. Zariah looked up, not with anger, but with a gaze full of guilt and fear. "I tried to tell you, so many times, but some people, Lucas, when they want you erased from a story, they have enough power to delete you from every single caption." Zariah turned away, pulling the three children from the snow station, quick, deliberate, as if she were fleeing a crime scene, not walking away from a love story. Lucas didn't follow. He just stood there, alone in a layer of melting snow, feeling like nothing beneath his feet was real anymore. No roots, no name, no trace. The feeling wasn't pain, it was erasure. He watched the kids disappear into the distance, each with their own gait, but all tilting their heads the same way when curious, exactly like he used to do as a boy. "They're mine," Lucas whispered. "No test needed, no confirmation. Genes can be forged, but blood doesn't lie." The question was no longer, "Are they my children?" It was, "Who had the power to erase me from their lives? And why?" And deep down, Lucas knew. To get them back, he wouldn't just have to fight for love. He'd have to expose an entire system that erased him from the shadows. Lucas didn't wait another second. That very night he called his office, with only one directive: hire a private legal team. Investigate Zariah Wells' life for the past 5 years. The results came back faster than expected, and they hurt more than he was ready for. Zariah was married. Her husband, Graham Voss, a name Lucas knew all too well. A savvy investor in biotech, Graham was the man who declined to fund Genevux 4 years ago, citing Lucas's emotional instability as the reason. Now, Graham was the face of a major fundraising campaign in Denver, titled Fathers Without Borders, an initiative supporting adoptive fathers of abandoned children. On the cover of a glossy magazine, Graham stood smiling, gently cradling 3 children in his arms. Below the photo, the caption read, "A model father raising 3 non-biological kids as his own." Lucas stared at the image, a strange, sharp pain pulsing in his chest. It wasn't just that another man was raising his children. It was that the very man who once tried to erase him from the industry he built from nothing was now parading around as the perfect father, to Lucas's own blood. A thick folder was placed in front of Lucas, stamped in red, "Confidential, correspondence from 2020. He opened it, and the very first line froze the blood in his veins. I know the child carries Tan's genes. If you keep quiet, I can protect you and the kids. Graham Voss. To Zariah Wells. Graham hadn't just learned the truth. He had known from the very beginning. Because back in that same year, when Genovax was still in prototype, Graham had been invited to join the seed funding round. He declined, but later, he reached out directly to Zariah. In a legally extracted email between Zariah and her sister, one sentence stood out. Graham promised he'd take care of us if I cut all ties with Lucas. He said the media would tear me apart if they found out I had 3 undocumented kids with a penniless Asian man. Lucas felt like he was drowning. Graham hadn't stolen Zariah. He bought her silence, with power, with reputation, and with the promise that the children would have a good father, so long as that man's name wasn't Tan. Lucas sat frozen as he reached the deepest section of the report. Zariah hadn't just been controlled. She had been systematically stripped of her autonomy. Every bank account, every credit card, even the house title, all registered under Graham's name. Every single expense for the children, from school tuition to insurance to medical visits, required approval from the offices of Voss and Partners. But the hardest blow came in Appendix B. Lucas's attorney, Celine Hart, lifted a thin sheet of paper. This is the DNA test result issued by Graham's private lab. The document stated clearly, no biological relationship between Lucas Tan and the 3 children. Forged. Celine's voice trembled with fury. He used an internal lab, one where he's a major shareholder, to manufacture false genetic data, and he submitted it to the county court as evidence to have you removed from their birth records. Lucas was stunned, silent. Not only had they stolen his role as a father, they had erased him from the very biology, while he himself was rewriting the genetic map of mankind. From the banking records and insurance data gathered by Selena's team, a chilling truth began to surface. Graham wasn't just manipulating a family. He was gambling with lives. For profit. Child was insured under a life insurance policy worth $600,000, with Graham Voss listed as the sole beneficiary. Zariah had no knowledge of the policy's terms. Her name appeared only as temporary guardian. In a handwritten internal memo, Graham wrote, "If Zariah becomes mentally unstable or unexpectedly passes away, legal guardianship will transfer solely to me. No DNA reconfirmation, no legal disputes." Lucas read that line, and his body went cold. Graham was planning for Zariah to disappear. And the children, his own flesh and blood, would become private assets to further build the image of a heroic father, raising abandoned orphans. And the real biological father? Erased, branded as emotionally unstable, in case he ever dared to come back. Lucas didn't respond with anger. He responded like a scientist. In his private lab in Palo Alto, he quietly activated a new, unreleased feature of the Genovax app, anonymous paternity testing using hair strands. 3 samples, stealthily collected from Zariah's scarf and the 2 wool hats the children wore at the snow station, were submitted for analysis. 72 hours later, the results appeared on the screen. Genetic match between sample X, Lucas Tan, and the 3 child samples, 99.98%. Paternal relationship confirmed. Lucas smiled, not because he had won, but because the truth finally had a voice. He immediately reached out to the organization, Fathers Without Borders, where Graham was serving as president, posing as an anonymous Asian philanthropist interested in investing in their global adoptive fatherhood campaign. The invitation was approved within a day. Lucas walked into the organization's headquarters in a sharp, steel blue suit. No business card, No tan name. He didn't need to explain himself. The truth was already in his pocket. Now, he just needed to sit back and watch a fox show off its fur. Celine Hart, an attorney specializing in personal crimes and guardianship manipulation, needed just 3 weeks to turn outrage into a case file strong enough to topple an empire. Inside a small black USB, unlabeled, unencrypted, was everything Graham never saw coming. A copy of the original birth certificates, with the father's name left blank, but the registration date perfectly matching the day Zariah disappeared. The Genovex DNA test results, showing a 100% match between Lucas and the 3 children. Bank statements proving Zariah had no financial autonomy, with every expense for the children requiring approval from Graham-controlled accounts. And the death blow. An audio recording from a private party, where Graham laughed with a business associate. "They all think I'm the father of those angelic kids. I just seized the moment, that's all. Look at the media, eating up the story like it's the damn gospel." Lucas listened to that clip 3 times. Each time, the truth sharpened. Graham hadn't just stolen fatherhood. He had used those very children to build a myth around himself. The Ethics and Human Technology Conference that year took place in Denver, a gathering of the brightest minds in biology, genetics, and family law. Graham Voss was the keynote speaker presenting on Fatherhood in the Age of Technology. There was just one thing he didn't know. The audience that day wasn't just filled with scientists. It held something else. The truth, waiting for its moment to hit the big screen. As Graham spoke proudly about the responsibilities of fatherhood, Celine Hart, representing an independent human rights organization, raised her hand to submit supplemental data. She walked to the stage, no theatrics, no speech, just one click. The screen lit up with photos of the 3 children. DNA test results, 99.98% genetic match with Lucas Tan. The audio recording, "I just seized the moment." And one brutal headline, "The pretend father, the controlling husband, the hypocrite they applauded." The press erupted. A journalist stood up. "Mr. Voss, are you posing as a biological father to secure funding and praise off the backs of children?" Graham froze, stone still. Lucas, seated in the 3rd row, lowered his head, not in shame, but because the truth had finally found its microphone. The news spread like wildfire in a dry season. Within 48 hours of the conference, Graham Voss was removed from every ethics board, research council, and charity organization he once led. Investors pulled out. Journalists unearthed his entire history of manipulation and fabricated genetic records. The State Court of Colorado held an emergency hearing. Celine presented the full body of evidence, and in less than 2 hours, Lucas Tan was legally recognized as the biological father of all 3 children. His name was restored, without question, to their birth certificates, school records, and official household documents. Zariah sat in the courtroom. She turned to Lucas. For the first time, not lowering her gaze. "I'm not under anyone's control anymore," she whispered, tears falling in silence. "Not because I won, but because the truth stood on the right side." Lucas gently took her hand, not like an old lover, but like a man who could finally call his family by name, without needing anyone's permission. That weekend, Lucas took the 3 children to Evergreen Biopark, the place where, years ago, he would stand for hours staring at the mock-up of a genetics lab, dreaming of one day creating something big enough to change the world. Today, he wasn't here to change the world. He just wanted to walk beside the 3 little lives that had changed his. The kids ran wild through the marine exhibit, bursting with excitement as if they'd never seen giant animatronic whales before. One of them, the middle child, looked up and asked, "Do you like whales, Dad?" Lucas laughed. The first laugh in years that didn't carry exhaustion. "From now on, I'll love whatever you love." No science, no genetics, no proof, just presence. And for the first time, his eyes didn't look toward the future. They stayed right here, in the present, where three little voices were calling him Dad, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Less than 2 weeks after the expose, Graham Voss officially became the focus of a federal investigation for legal fraud, genetic data manipulation, and gross violations of medical ethics. BioAscend, the biotech investment firm he co-founded, had its accounts frozen. Partners withdrew en masse. The stock plummeted into freefall. The media showed no mercy. A lengthy investigative piece in The Atlantic ran under the headline, "Graham Voss, the pretend father who engineered life with fake data." Beneath it, a photo of Graham leaving the courthouse, no longer gripping a microphone, but clutching a mess of disorganized documents, head bowed low. On a late-night talk show, an ethicist put it bluntly, Graham didn't just steal fatherhood. He commodified deception and sold it as a tech product. And overnight, the man once hailed as America's model adoptive father became the living symbol of a far deeper question. Are we believing in the truth, or just the most polished version of a lie that was built to sell? The Graham Voss case didn't end as just a personal scandal. Within a month, dozens of biological fathers came forward, sharing stories of being cut out of their children's lives by power, bias, or forced silence. The hashtag #RightToFather went viral across the country. Congressional hearings were launched. Several states began reviewing their paternity verification systems, pushing for mandatory transparency in genetic data tied to custody and parental rights. Lucas Tan, once a quiet scientist working behind the scenes, suddenly became the face of a rising movement for genetic justice. He spoke at a federal human rights forum. Technology is not the enemy, but in the wrong hands, it can erase a father's name with just a line of code. And I believe genetic truth should never be hidden for someone else's benefit. From a personal quest to reclaim his 3 children, Lucas achieved what no one expected. He turned personal revenge into a rallying cry to change the system. 1 year after the truth came to light, Lucas Tan appeared on the cover of Scientific Humanity, not as a CEO, but as the father who reclaimed his identity through intellect and patience. In his final interview, when asked if he felt satisfied seeing Graham's complete downfall, Lucas simply shook his head and glanced toward the garden, where his 3 children were playing under the sunlight. "I didn't need to destroy Graham," he said, his voice soft as spring wind. "I just needed to step into the light with my children and let them see that truth, when patient enough, always finds its way home." Lucas didn't seek revenge through scandal. He answered with presence, not with courtroom speeches, but with a warm hand resting on his eldest son's shoulder at parent-teacher night. Not with a spotlight speech, but with the same whispered bedtime promise each night, "Daddy's here." And as one journalist once wrote, maybe what Graham never understood is that there are people who don't need to win in the eyes of the world. They just need to be called, truthfully, by one word: Father. I used to think justice was about courtroom victories, about trials erupting with evidence. But after telling this story, I've come to realize something deeper. True justice is when a child can look a man in the eye and say, "Dad," without needing anyone's permission. It's when the truth, no matter how hidden, manipulated, or forced into silence, still quietly finds its way back home. Lucas didn't use power to seek revenge. He used intelligence and waited for the right moment. And above all, he chose to rebuild, pushed to the margins instead of destroy. If you've ever felt your voice wasn't loud enough, remember this. Truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs someone willing to stand still, long enough for the light to find them. Thank you for walking with me through this story. And if one day you're faced with the choice between staying silent or speaking up for what's right, I hope you're strong enough to choose the latter.